Hello, I am D. Suresh Kumar and you are watching Tamil Nadu elections with the Hindu. Joining me today is our Deputy National Editor, Mr. Srinivasan Ramani, and Political Correspondent, Mr. Sai Charan. Welcome to the show. Yesterday, Tamil Nadu had a very historic elections with a record turnout of 85.1%. These are very provisional figures, but the talk has been that this number has been facilitated due to the entry of actor Vijay's Tamalaga Vetri Kalagam. But in reality, what we have is when we look at micro data, micro level, when we analyze it, that is not the case. So we are going to decode this number for you and also see whether this is a wave election or whether there is an anti-incumbency factor. What exactly does this number say? But first, let me tell you that these are very provisional number. What the EC has given us as of 5 p.m. today is the overall number percentage. We still don't know the actual figure of voter turnout in terms of numbers, and therefore we will be extrapolating this percentage based on the total electors data and looking at it. So first we have figures here for 4 assembly elections that Tamil Nadu has seen, rather 5 from 2006 onwards, how it's the figures voter turnout has increased over the years. So Srini, why don't you tell me what these numbers actually reflect?
Yeah, so if you look at the provisional data, as you pointed out, the voter turnout in Tamil Nadu in this election is 85.1%. That 85.1% is the highest ever. And if you look at the figures post the last SIR, that is the 2002 SIR, this is the highest figure recorded in Tamil Nadu ever. But we should understand that this figure is the post SIR figure. So that is captured in this graph. If you look at this graph where we are showing the electorate, that is the total number of eligible voters in blue, right, and votes polled, total number of actual votes that were polled in red, right. So we notice, let me just zoom this in. If you only look at the electorate, for example, the electorate steadily went up till 2021, but in the SIR, as we know, 67 lakh voters were deleted in net, right. So we saw a drop from close to 6.6 crores or so, more than
6.41 crores to
6.41 crores to 5.67 crores.
5.73 now.
Yeah, 5.73 crores. So there was a drop of close to, from the 2021 election, there was a drop of 57 lakhs, right? At the same time, the number of people who voted, actual number of people who voted, has gone up steadily, almost like a steady incline, right? So if you extrapolate this graph and if you assume there is no SIR, then you would have assumed the actual number of voters to be close to 4.9 crores. And what is the actual number of voters in this election from provisional figures? 4.9 crores. So we can say that the number of voters who voted in these elections are in line with the previous figures, right? So there was no massive jump suddenly if you look at the actual voters turn. But the figure 80.851 is huge because the denominator, that is the total electorate, that dropped significantly. That dropped by 57 lakh. So to claim that this is a special election where we are seeing a surge of voters that was not seen before is not entirely accurate. We would have seen a similar increase in the number of voters if steadily we look at the the electorate and the voters from 2006 onwards. So even from these provisional numbers, we can claim that to call this election a special election, of course, the number of voters has increased, there is no doubt about it, but the increase in number of voters has been steady over time, so we could have expected a similar increase now. Now the question is, when the final numbers come in, we know for a fact that this time the Election Commission has given apps to its polling officers across the state, and therefore the collection of real-time polling information is faster and more accurate this time. So I suspect this number won't really go up much. If this number doesn't go up much, then this analysis holds. And the analysis that we have done shows that the electorate, that the number of people who actually voted this time is in line with what we saw in the previous elections.
Yes, that's right. So basically, only difference that could come is when the postal votes are added to this. It might incrementally go up. Then the other factor that I want to mention is you look at West Bengal first phase polling.
Yes.
92.8%. There's no Vijay there. So you really can't attribute it to the entry of one deputant actor to show that the numbers have gone up.
But there is SIR there also.
There is SIR there also, that's right.
More pronounced than in Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
If I am not wrong, in West Bengal, the percentage of people who were removed from the electoral rolls was higher than that of Tamil Nadu. And you also had 2 layers of removals. One was in the first draft phase, and then there was something called a logical discrepancy question that was being addressed by the electoral officers, including judicial officers, in that 27 lakh people were deleted there. Which is why you notice a state of West Bengal where polling in any case has always been above 80%. And in fact, touching 85, 86% in the past, it has gone up to 93% now. So is that a wave election there? Nobody is really talking about a wave election there, in my opinion. They are also still attributing this to the SIR. Therefore, we should also give heavy weightage to the SIR in interpreting this figure of 85.1.
In fact, I would say that this is a purified voters list that's reflected very well in these numbers. And also, from my experience, I'll tell you that in 2004, when the Lok Sabha elections were conducted in Tamil Nadu, there were a lot of complaints about voters' names not figuring in the final rolls. And on the day of elections, and eventually the EC had ordered a probe headed by the Kerala CEO into that. But this time, if you notice, there's been no such complaints, major complaints, although there have been a few complaints about, names missing post SIR, but it's not large enough to alter the voting pattern or something.
Very interesting point you made, DSK. That can be interpreted by this number also. If you say that this number is exactly in line with the previous numbers, that is the number of people who turned out is in the same proportion or the same actual numbers as in before, that means eligible voters have not been deleted.
Yes.
Correct? Yes. That could be the first order way of looking at it. But having said that, it could also mean that some voters who are eligible but who are lackadaisical in actually following up with the ECI to ensure that their names are there in the list, those voters have been deleted.
That's true.
So this doesn't justify what the ECI has done.
Yes.
The ECI, in the manner it went about the SIR, where it got enumeration forms and put the onus on the voters to be part of the list, has also deleted some eligible voters who have not taken the responsibility of going and following up with the ECI. So therefore, we cannot, absolve the ECI for, the deletions as well. So you have to put that on record as well.
So what we need to do now is to justify this whole figure. We'll have to look at the micro level data in respect of Chennai, right, where Sai Charan has done some real micro level data to understand how the list has been purified. So, Sai, you went across 16 constituencies. You looked at the figures of 2021 and 2026. What is the difference? And also, let me remind our viewers that 2021 was an election that was held in the midst of the COVID pandemic. So, we'll have to see how the voter turnout was there at that point of time, how it has increased now, and still, what are the real actual difference?
Yeah, so basically in 2021, we have 40 lakh voters in Chennai, the 16 assembly segments that falls under Chennai district. Even during the, when the special, just before the special intensive revision of electoral roll, when the electoral roll was frozen, it was around same 40 lakhs. So this time, if you see in 2021, the actual number of voters who came to polling booths and voted was 24 lakhs. Yeah. Okay, this time post SIR, our electorate has shrunk from 40 lakhs to 28 lakhs. Now, the actual voters who came to vote remains 24 lakhs. 2021 also it was 24 lakhs. Now also it is 24. So there is no absolute change in absolute numbers. But since there is a change in the denominator, that there was a massive shrunk of the electorate, it went up from 59% to 83%. Only the denominator drove the surge. If you see the surge here, it is 83 from 59. So it is completely driven by the denominator, not by the numerator. That it is not that voters came enthusiastically and there is any vote, there is any wave to come forward and vote.
Yeah. So like they say in court, note the point, Your Honor, right? Yes. I would like to note this point. Despite the voter turnout going up from 59.75% to 83.4%. In actual terms, the electorate remained at 24 lakhs.
Yes.
I mean, the people who went out to vote, the number remained at 24 lakhs. Yes. So clearly, the SIR exercise, which deleted a lot of, Chennai was the district with the highest deletions, correct? If I'm not wrong. So that played a big role in increasing the voter turnout in terms of percentage. But in actual numbers, it was not more or less the same.
But again, one more interpretation beyond that we can do is usually, there is a claim that, Chennai electors are not coming forward to vote. That is, Chennai electors are actually coming to vote. Yes. Yeah. The voter turnout reflects that. They actually, more than 80% of Chennai electors are voting in every election. Because of the, there were large scale duplications and all, it was not reflecting in the voter turnout.
Also, we could say the people who are lackadaisical voters, who are not really bothered to vote in previous cycles, their names were removed because they didn't take the effort to register themselves.
Yeah, register them back.
Therefore, they were not reflected in this election also, which is reflected in the higher vote.
So basically, the percentage will be different. When you look at it in terms of percentage, it will show a huge jump, but the actual number of people turning up at the polling booths is different. In fact, this I think is best illustrated from the case of Annanagar, which saw one of the largest deletions of voters.
35%
Yes, so there you look at the last year's percentage, 57.96, but whereas this time it's 85.09.
I think, Sai, it will be better if you explain each number for Annanagar. What was the electorate?
Yeah, the number of electors was 2.86 lakhs, and actually it has now reduced to 1.88, which is close to nearly 98 98,000 reduction. And then if you see 1.65, last time the 1.65 lakh turned up to vote. This time 1.61, 1.61, yeah, 1.61.
So actually there's a reduction.
Yeah, there is a 4,000 reduction in
4,000 reduction. But in terms of percentages, there is
a huge
but 28%, 28 percentage point increase.
Yes.
So these figures actually help us to negate this view that in Chennai people don't turn up to vote, and people in Annanagar are posh, they live in a posh area, so they don't come up to the polling stations. But the numbers actually tell us a different reality, right? So now we have the Tamil Nadu level map, constituency map basically. So here it will show you what are the voting figures yesterday, the actual turnout, what are the loss compared to the previous years. So Srini, can you just explain what this map?
So we have 234 constituencies in Tamil Nadu, right? Of that, 220 assembly constituencies saw a net gain in the actual voters. Meaning in 2021, if there were say 2.5 lakh voters, and in 2026 there were 2.6 lakh voters, that means there is a net gain in total number of voters. Like that, 220 assembly constituencies saw a net increase in the number of voters. 14 assembly constituencies had a net decline, meaning the number of people who voted in 2021 were more than the number of people who voted in 2026. So 14 constituencies net decline. So essentially across the state you saw an increase in the net number of voters. But as we showed in the previous graph, when we looked at the elections over time, we expected this net increase because in every election since the SIR, there has been an increase. So that is what this thing shows. If you want to drill down deeper, Mannargudi, let us just, I'll take care of this.
The red one.
In Mannargudi, if you see, the net actual voters, it has reduced by 2,600 votes. And electorate, and also interestingly, 10% of the electorate was removed during the SIR. Okay, but still the turnout has been 82.14%, right? Similarly, if you look at Odanchatram, there was a drop of 2,000 votes in actual votes. The electorate that was removed was close to 9.5% deleted, and net deletions, and voter turnout was 90%. Despite having 90% voted, essentially the number of people who voted was reducing. On the other hand, something like Palladam, there were 37,603
more people voted.
And the voter turnout was close to 90%.
Right.
One thing I want to ask you, DSK, if you look at this, can we say a pattern? Can we see that there were more voters in the west region?
Yes.
And in the north regions? Whereas in Delta and to some extent the south we didn't see.
Yes.
Can we say that?
Yes, I think we can say, because overall figures also in the west this time the turnout has been significantly higher. And even when you look at the areas like Karur, which is actually not in part of the west but part of Delta region, there has been a significant drive in terms of percentage.
Even when since morning when I was tracking, I could see every 2 hours there is a brisk polling in western districts. All the top 10 districts, if you take every 2 hours, the polling was brisk in all the western part of Tamil Nadu.
Right. Yes. Can you link that to the what they call in Tamil the Kalam or the contest in these two areas?
The contest in the west is actually, west is the fort of the AIADMK, largely the fort which the DMK has been trying to penetrate. And also the west is where you have Salem, where Edappadi Palaniswamy, the AIADMK leader, is contesting. You also have very strong AIADMK leaders in the entire region. If you come to Coimbatore, you will have Mr. SP Velumani. Then you go to Namakkal, you have Tangamani. You go to Krishnagiri and Dharmapuri regions, they have their own strong KP Munusamy and others. So and then the PMK is stronger. Also the BJP has stronger. Like Avinashi, for instance, you had L Murugan contesting there. So that could perhaps explain
Can
that
we make an assumption that the contests, where the contests are higher, the voter turnout is higher in absolute numbers?
I think we'll have to slightly look at more granular data for that, to go for with a particular, with a great conviction. If you have to say that, we'll have to look at the granular data. But otherwise, largely, that's how it looks like. The key constituencies, VIP constituencies, you have seen a jump.
Right. And if you notice here, in terms of, let us zoom into Chennai. Look at Chennai is very small, so you won't be able to see it fully. But if you notice, you see lots of red, brown, and yellows in Chennai. So even though voter turnout went up higher in percentage, the numbers were relatively lower because of the fact that there was a large-scale deletions in Chennai. So you look at this 32.3, 65% deletions. Somewhere else it will be, if you notice, most of the deletions will be 33, 35% or so on, which is why it is reflecting in the reds, while other places you see more of the blues.
Right. So that's the beauty of the numbers, beauty of statistics, because statistics sometimes say it's a statistical fallacy, right? And some people say that it's also a dismal science. But it all depends on how we interpret it. So usually they link a higher turnout with a certain level of anti-incumbency, or that the voters actually want for regime change. But the figures actually don't show us that. If you look at elections from 1967 onwards, you look at sometimes like in 2001, the turnout in percentage was only 59.07, but there was a regime change despite that. And there have been cases like in 2011 where you really saw an increase in the voter turnout, and still there was a regime change. So the regime change might happen irrespective of the numbers or the percentage. So this graph actually shows us that.
Yes, and also DSK, political scientists in India can say with a lot of confidence and affirmation that there is a virtually little correlation between voter turnout, that is increase or decrease in voter turnout, and anti-incumbency versus pro-incumbency. There are places where there are elections where voter turnout has gone up and regimes have come back. There are places where voter turnout has come down and regimes have lost. So there is no direct correlation. And therefore it is not prudent on our part to make this assumption or make this clear claim that if there is an increase in the voter turnout, that would automatically lead to regime change. And your numbers also bear it out.
And then this bolded portion where the SIR happened previously in 2000.
Yes, 2001. You had the last SIR exercise before this, and then you can see in 2006 again there was an increase in the voter percent, 11 percentage point.
Even in terms of absolute numbers, if you see here we have only 24 roughly 24 lakhs. Here you can see close to 50 lakhs.
And it's a 11 percentage point jump, and we have a similar 11 percentage point jump.
But the numbers actually tell you a different story compared to the percentage.
Let us go to the voter increment data, DSK.
Yes, so here we actually go through the actual increment in voters across elections since 1967. And then you see the percentage, how it's gone up and then come down in certain areas, right? So what is the minus 1.38%?
So in 2001, the electorate compared to the previous elections actually came down.
The number of persons who turned up to vote in 1996 was more than 2001.
Right.
So there is a reduction there.
And in fact, in 2021, the number of people who turned up to vote was 7.1%, which is higher than this election. The much touted huge voter turnout election, it was only 5.3%.
No, if at all we have to claim a surge, then it should be like this. But it is coming down. There is no surge.
Yes. So you have to look at the actual increment in the terms of percentages. So here, where we showed this, you see this increases, that is reflected in this graph here. This graph actually mentions that.
Yes, that's right. And also, Srini, would you like to compare the entry of Vijay with actor Chiranjeevi, right? And then show us something on what really happened when Chiranjeevi came with a massive crowd turnout at his rallies, huge, and then, with similar expected voter percentage that we see in the case of Vijay. What really happened in composite Andhra Pradesh?
Thanks for asking that, DSK. So I wanted to look into similar exercises in the past. There have been actors who have come in like NTR and others. But Chiranjeevi's coming in was very similar to this Vijay's entry. You had established parties which have also had their coalitions, and then you had this mass leader, a mass matinee idol, very popular matinee idol, plunging into politics, forming a new party, not aligning with anyone, also having a core support base. We know that Vijay carries a core support base among Christians in Tamil Nadu to a great extent. But in the case of Chiranjeevi, his core support base was from the Kapu community, which is significant community, close to 20 to 26% of United Andhra Pradesh.
Yes.
So they never had a major leader or a party of its own. So when Chiranjeevi came in, people expected a big impact, and there was a big impact in terms of vote share. He won close to 16% of the votes, right? But he only won 16 seats, right? Despite having concentrated votes of Kapus across the state. Vijay, on the other hand, doesn't have concentrated votes across. It's a diffuse vote across the state, right? So that is a clear difference. Despite having, he only won 16 seats, and the contest was between the Congress at the time. It was the incumbent. It was in power from 2004 to 2009. It was led by Y.S. Rajశేఖర Reddy, and the opposition was a coalition. Telugu Desam,
Mahakutami.
Yes, Mahakutami. Telugu Desam, TRS, that is the Telangana Rashtra Committee, which later on became Bharat Rashtra Samiti, the left parties, right? And each of them went on to form governments later. That is another matter. But in terms of vote shares, the Congress just lost 2 percentage points from 2004. The opposition lost 12.9 percentage points. And the bulk of the 16 percentage points came from the opposition. So the split in the anti-incumbency factor actually benefited the Congress, which despite losing 2 percentage points, won a bunch of they won 157 seats over 290.
Very comfortable majority.
Very comfortable majority. I won't say very comfortable, it's a good majority. And the opposition was limited only to 109 seats. And despite winning 16% of the vote share, they could only win 16 seats. This is the outcome of the first past the post system, which rewards incumbents when there is an opposition disunity. This great journalist Pranay Roy and when he was a cephalogist used to always emphasize this. Index of opposition unity matters. If the opposition is united, then it is very difficult for the incumbent to have a direct fight that would hurt the incumbent. But if the opposition is disunited, in that case, what happens is that because of the split in the anti-incumbency votes, the incumbent benefits. But in Tamil Nadu, you have various other factors playing out. So we'll have to wait for the final result.
That's right. That's right. I think in Tamil Nadu, one, the DMK has formed a very strong alliance, but then the NDA is also there, where the different factions of the AADMK, especially the AMMK and the AADMK have come together. We need to see how they perform in their core areas. And also Vijay, especially in Chennai, I think he's going to be a major disruptor in Chennai. Chennai, I think some contests could even turn into DMK versus TVK. So we'll know that. And I think we'll have greater insight into these data when the EC releases the final figures in terms of actual numbers, and when we get some booth level data on how many men, how many women voted in each booth, the age group, right? Once we seal that will give us some greater idea of how things move after the election results. So we will.
Sorry, DSK, I just want to give a plug. I would like our viewers to watch our data point section. We will parse these numbers further. We'll link it to the actual cuts in the electorate during the SIR and see if the SIR cuts have impinged upon voter turnout as well, and other granular exercises will follow.
Yes, I think that the viewers must look forward to, because the data point in the Hindu gives you a very granular details of certain developments, and also it helps to look at things with a different prism, right, completely. So I think you should watch data point as frequently as possible. In fact, every day in the Hindu we have a data section that also is worth reading. So what we'll do is we'll be meeting you in the coming days with more such data-based stories looking at how Tamil Nadu voted and what the result has been. So do stay tuned. Thank you for watching.